Hello. For our class, we're going to talk about online discussions and our digital citizenship. So for class, there's a couple things we need to talk about. Citizenship in an online setting. Whether it's called digital citizenship, digital wellness, or digital ethics, the issues are still the same. How should we act when we are online, and what should be taught to the next generation? With the growth of bring your own device and one-to-one initiatives in school, there's a need to talk about this, about responsible use of technology. That's from digitalcitizenship.net. Now, that's what we want to talk about with our class right now, for the next few minutes. We want to talk about your responsible use of technology. There are 9 elements of digital citizenship. There is digital access, digital commerce, digital communication, digital literacy, digital etiquette, digital law, digital rights and responsibilities, digital health and wellness, and digital security. Now, for our intents and purposes, we're not going to talk about commerce. We're also not going to talk about literacy. If you're in this class, if you're in our situation, you obviously know how to get online, and we're not going to go much deeper than that. So next thing, the law. Well, pretty much we're not going to address the law other than plagiarism, and that comes in one of our other discussions. Okay, rights and responsibilities, that fits into that same plagiarism discussion, so we'll get back to that another time. And then health and wellness, that is what you're taking in and what you're putting out online. Now, security, we are going to address. Access, we are going to address. Communications and etiquette, I think, are linked personally. Basically, our graphic over here on the right-hand side of our screen says it up. Before you do anything online, we need to know things. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And that last one is what I'm going to harp on as we get going. Okay? So, school access, personal access. What are you doing? These are some questions a lot of people ask, like where am I accessing the internet? What am I accessing on the internet? What am I sharing? Who is watching? And who could be watching? Now, I'm not talking about cyber stalkers. I'm not talking about people looking over your shoulder. I'm not talking about identity thieves. Let's just talk about this first off. Where am I accessing? What environment am I in? That has a lot of effect on what we're doing, and what filters will be in place. In our situation in school, the filters are quite strict. In fact, there's a lot of sites we can't get to, and that is a good thing. It's there to protect us and to protect our hardware and our software. So we'll talk about that more in depth as we get going. What am I accessing? If it's not something that's on task or on assignment, we shouldn't be accessing here. Now, what you access at home, that's up to you and your own choices, your own lifestyle. But what are you accessing here? We don't want to access stuff through the school, through our situation, that is not on topic, that is not something we're using for our class and our education. Now, what am I sharing? Sharing here should consist of, and in all class situations, should consist of the information pertinent to the discussion, the information that will help us with what it is we're studying, what we're learning, what we're working on. Now, who's watching? That's our class. That's our audience. What are we posting? So when we're sharing stuff, we're sharing with our class. Now, I'm not talking about Big Brother watching over our shoulder. I'm not talking about the NSA siphoning off things. I'm talking about us, our class. Our audience is our fellow class members, our team members, our school. Okay. Now, who could be watching? Well, depending on our discussion, it can go outside the school. It could be your parents. It could be somebody else's parents. It could be anybody from our school community. So be conscious of that. Address things appropriately. We'll talk about that more in a second. Okay, class discussions. Class discussions lead to greater understanding and interpersonal skills. That is a fact. As we're discussing things, I rather discuss face-to-face. But in our digital world, we need to learn how to interact digitally. We need to learn how to be appropriate in our statements. We need to understand what a collaborative environment is. We need to understand how our discussion should work, how we gain things from it. Now, looking at our list over here, our points, open discussion. Yeah, pretty much anything is on the table is appropriate to our class. We're not going to talk about biology in our engineering class unless it affects our setup, like how am I situating a human body to fit in this position? How do I make my hands fit in there to attach this bolt? That's as far as we want to go with that. But open discussions, yeah, we need to understand things that relate to what we're talking about, and we need to listen, ask, and then restate. Now, that's one of those key terms. You'll see it in a lot of engineering ethics books. You'll see it in a lot of upper division classes when you get off to your trade school, tech school, your industry, or whatever, university. and they'll tell you. You listen, you ask questions to clarify, and then when you think you got it, you restate it back to the person and see if you understand. And then you proceed to make your point. It is not meant to be aggressive. It is not meant to be insulting. It is meant to be a discussion. It is meant to be a civil state. Yeah, you can disagree. Absolutely, you can disagree. But you listen and you seek to understand. You're going to hear a lot of things that sound like they came right out of a Franklin Covey book or a seminar for one of the planning institutes. We really do want to work on that idea. We want to listen and seek to understand what somebody's saying to us before we worry about being understood clearly. It's a two-way street there. So we want to work on that. Now, oversharing. Oversharing is a huge problem. And as we're working on stuff with class, when we're working on any of our things we're doing, we get a lot of things that we're working in. Social media is great, but it can be overused. I love this graphic right here. 74% of parents feel another parent shared too much online. Well, that's awkward. That's parents. What about teenagers? What about young adults, college students? There's a lot of stuff that gets shared online that is way overboard. Sometimes way too much. And we want to control that, because one of the things we're going to talk about is when you're working in industry, when you're working on a project, there's such thing as oversharing. Absolutely. It's called industrial espionage in some ways, and sometimes it's unintentional. But we want to make sure everybody understands what they can share, what's appropriate to share, and what not to share, and that in a work situation. Now, personal situation, you have to make those calls. But in a work situation, there's something there altogether. Now, I will tell you right up front, I would strongly suggest if you're using any social media outlet, we got a few listed over here, I would honestly say make sure your personal settings are quite strict, and make sure your friends' security settings are pretty good. You can't set them for them, but you want to make sure they're solid, because anything you share, if they can share it too, that gets out to their friends and their friends and their friends, and it just spreads. So be careful what you share. Now, let's look at this. One of the things I really worry about, and this happens all the time, is the geospatial data that goes with all of our stuff. Appropriate use and inappropriate use. Geospatial data is amazing for what we're doing. When we start talking about GIS systems and GPS systems and surveying and all that stuff in our engineering classes, that is literal geospatial data we're pulling in. But did you know your phones, your personal devices, have geospatial data attached to everything you do? Your cell phone has a GPS tracker in it. When you make a cell phone call, they know where the call is made from. It's triangulated. When you take a photograph and it stores to the cloud, or just snap it, there's metadata attached to any photograph unless you've got it and turned it off. So you want to use it appropriately. I like to turn mine off, and if I'm traveling somewhere, I leave it off. Like when we go on school trips, if you're snapping pictures, don't be sharing them on Instagram. That's just telling everybody where you're at. Events, same kind of thing. You can share them later, absolutely, but I wouldn't share them right that minute. It's not necessarily a good thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that's a thing that I wouldn't do. Okay. Now, cyberbullying. We're going to talk about discussion boards. 21st century skills consist of things like honesty, integrity, and dependability. That's the breakdown. That's not what we normally call them, but they are being a responsible citizen, being an ethical person. And stalking and cyberbullying online, trolling as it's sometimes referred to, these are things that you don't want to do. Who does it affect? It can affect you. It can affect your friends, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your cousin. Who knows? So think about it. You want to be polite. We really do want to live by the golden rule here. We want to treat others the way we want to be treated. Where does it occur? Guys, it occurs everywhere. It occurs in all of our classes. So as you're working on your things and you're working on your stuff and you're critiquing each other's work, be constructive in your criticism. Be helpful. Don't tear somebody down. And if somebody's having a bad day, watch their back. They're your team members. They're your classmates. They're your friends. So that's how we stop it. We realize that it starts with us stopping it. Now, we're going to use a lot of social media stuff. We're also going to use a lot of news articles, and we want reliable data. Now, this is a major news outlets. This is a diagram made by Media Bias, and they show how the whole chart breaks down. What is right-wing conservative and what is left-wing liberalism. Now, if you want good data, you want to avoid this area here and absolutely this area here. The two extremes, yeah, we want to stay out of those. Never, ever get stuff from those. You never know what crackpot wrote them in both cases. Now, same thing happens with the next area. There might have good data, but it is going to be skewed. You need to know it is absolutely going to be skewed. Now we get into this next, the skewed liberals. Yeah, that's obviously skewed liberals, skewed Democrats, skewed Republicans, skewed conservatives. It is very much colored by the news in the group. So we want to try to stay in this central area, the major news sources. Now, if you look, yeah, they do have them leaning right and left, and it's fine to have a political idea, a political bias, but you try not to share it in your work. You try to make your work as central as possible so that it works for as many people as possible. Good data is always good data. Now, let's look at this. Who's trusted? Well, here's this. The most trusted groups out there are in that very center area of that last chart we showed you. The BBC, I can't ever say that word. Public Television, and The Economist. Those are some of our most centralized pieces. PBS, The Guardian, Wall Street Journal. You know, the LA Times is pretty well trusted, and it is not exactly dead center. Okay? But as you get down here, you got Occupy Democrats and BuzzFeed. And oh my gosh, social media is way down the list. Anything you read on social media, don't trust it. I will give you the same warning. As you're reading things like Wikipedia, is great, but you want to make sure you check the sources on Wikipedia, because sometimes people skew things because they read something on one of these unreliable sources, so the data might not be reliable. So you check your stuff. Now, with all that said, what I'm going to do is leave you here with this. We're going to have online discussions. We're going to work with each other. We're going to use social media in our classroom, but you need to secure your information. You also need to be polite. You need to think about what you're saying and who you're saying it to. Address your audience. It's just like writing a paper. You address the audience, you pay attention to what the audience wants, and you work from that. But thanks for your time, and we'll see you later, guys.